place is situated. You got about 3 or 4 minutes to talk amongst yourselves. I think we're ready for the round of applause. Let's give it up for the anti-war panel. And bring your conversations to a close. If you still need to talk to somebody, be sure to take them out into the hall. All right. All right, we're almost ready to get started here. Could I ask you to just have a seat?
Oh, yeah, I got a seat right here. We got to have a sense of,
That's right.
because you know what, I'm from Milwaukee, and I didn't need a point on Reverend Jesse Jackson when I go down to City Hall in Milwaukee, get building permits, retired blue collar, and I never need a point. Cover, come on in. You want
Thank-
a soda? I said, no time to socialize. I got to get the working permits for the building, and it's nice to see people from Milwaukee. Reverend Jesse Jackson, is he still alive? I've been so busy. You know what, because I'm going on 80. So we're gonna interrupt.
Thank you. Okay, we are ready for the anti-war war group. Immediately after the anti-war panel, we're going to hear from the environmental panel, and then we're going to break into breakout groups. It's a lot packed in here. In these breakout groups, we're hoping that you will share ideas with the panel leaders. The panelists themselves have agreed to be breakout group leaders. This group, the anti-war group, will be situating themselves around the room, and after the environmental group, which will take their little flags, and anybody that wants to be part of the environmental breakout group can follow them up down 2 flights of stairs to the north hearing room. And I'll be around to help with that transition. And then we'll have about, I don't know, maybe 20, 30 minutes to talk, and then we have to get out of the Capitol. So it's going to be a pretty packed end run here. And then we'll encourage people to share what they talked about in their breakout groups when we'll come back together, and we'll talk about how you can get to the crossing. Tonight at the crossing, 2 live bands, actually two folk singers, Blaspheme, also known as Samantha Bosco. A lot of us Madisonian anti-war people know Samantha well. She'll be performing with Michael Bell. They're doing 1 set. Then we'll have Melly Mel's another dinner, a total complete new dinner will come to us tonight. And then Tani Jakite and the Afro Funk Stars will have a dance concert. So without further ado, let's listen to the anti-war panel. Give it up again for Janan Najib, who's agreed to moderate this panel.
Thank you, everyone. You know, we don't normally get to sit here, so we kind of feel like legislators. So I just felt that maybe we should do something. So can we get a vote on an anti-Israel ceasefire resolution here in the room, anti-genocide? Passed. Okay, we're ready to go. All right. I'm really honored to introduce this panel. Very, very well-known members and activists in the community. I'm going to start with my far right here. Someone that I have worked with very closely these past 15 months, Alon Shavoye, serves on the steering committee of the Milwaukee Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression. He's also the secretary of the National Alliance. Alon organizes for the national liberation of oppressed people in Milwaukee, especially those impacted by police crimes. The fight for transparency and accountability from law enforcement in Milwaukee goes hand in hand with building community power to hold the police accountable. As such, Alon dedicates his energy to being with the people of Milwaukee and responding to the issues that matter most to them, such as Palestinian liberation and putting an end to police crimes. And I do want to add to that he's also on the steering committee of the Wisconsin Coalition for Justice in Palestine. To my immediate right is Esti Dinur. She's a member of Jewish Voice for Peace and of Shoresh Israeli Anti-Zionists in the US. She is a print, digital, and radio journalist born in Israel to a Holocaust survivor father and a mother who survived the Nazi Blitz on London. She is a longtime peace activist and supporter of Palestinian rights and state. She's also the founder of Veterans for Peace Madison. Esti is a Friday host of the Noontime, a public affair radio show on WORTFM.org, 89.9 FM. And you can listen to her archived show at WORTFM.org with the tag Esti-Dinur. To my immediate left is Krista Brun. She is a poet and award-winning author of Crossing Borders, The Search for Dignity in Palestine. My organization did an article on her in our Wisconsin Muslim Journal recently, so you can look that up. As a mother of 3 Palestinian Americans, Krista has published academic work on Palestine, peace education, and diversity. She's led roundtables on the future of Israel and Palestine and speaks on the current and historical context of Israel and Palestine. She is a non-Jewish member of Jewish Voice for Peace and serves as a writing mentor with We Are Not Numbers, giving voice to young Palestinian writers. And then to my far left is the Reverend Jerry Folk. He's a retired ELCA pastor, former executive director of the Wisconsin Council of Churches. He is the author of 2 books, Worldly Christians and Doing Theology, Doing Justice. He taught peace studies at Bethany College in Bethany, West Virginia. I lived there for 2 years. Okay, oh, sorry, that's a side. And has authored articles in various theological publications. So let's give a warm welcome to our panelists. I'm going to start just in the way that I had introduced with each one to kind of give some commentary on the concept of anti-war.
Use this one. Hi, everyone. Thank you for bringing me here. Thank you for inviting me. It's truly an honor to participate and to speak a little bit about anti-war. Anti-war is very broad, right? So I'll talk a little bit about the questions around what the links between the broader anti-war efforts are and the work that we do in the Milwaukee Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, which primarily works around the questions, like Janan stated, around police crimes and police violence. Because those are immediate links that we have to really connect, right? Not just theoretical ones, but very material ones that should inform the practices that we take. And that's what we're here for today, right? To talk about different practices that we can do to put an end to this, to put an end to these wars that are used to oppress so many people, right? I think you stated, Janan, that we might not be the billionaires, but we are the billions of the people, right? And we are the ones that are going to liberate ourselves globally, not just here in Madison, not just in Wisconsin, not just in the US, but everywhere, right? In Palestine, in anywhere where there is oppression from this, these brutal ruling classes that use war against us, we have to liberate ourselves. And so it's very impactful, the role that the police play, particularly in Black and Brown communities across the US, but obviously I'll focus on Milwaukee. And so just to talk a little bit of some of those issues, I'm actually going to use the example firstly of what we just have been witnessing in California, in LA, where these fires have just devastated communities and there are no firefighters. Why? Well, they lost about $20 million of their budget because the mayor had to come up with some money to fund the police by $130 million. That's $130 million, right? And they took $20 million from the firefighters. You see this as a common trend across the US in almost all major municipalities, in Milwaukee including, right? In Milwaukee, our police budget is close to $300 million. It's going larger and larger every year. That means less funding for firefighters, less funding for education, less funding for our streets, for housing, things that actually keep our communities safe, right? And so this is a trend that we see nationally, right? We saw this past year, the flooding that hit the eastern part of the states. and they said, we don't have any more money for FEMA. They were down by what? It was like $8 or $9 billion that they didn't have. Whereas like a couple weeks earlier, they sent that exact same amount to fund the weapons for Israel. So this is a prioritization of the military industrial complex. This is a prioritization of this greedy war against all the peoples, against all the oppressed peoples. And you see that in the macro sense, right? We just talked about the military budget, but you see it in our local senses here in our communities, where the money that should be being poured into our communities is being poured into policing to repress people. I'm here in Madison, but just a little bit south of us in Fitchburg, a multi-million-dollar project was approved, right, to basically build a cop city, right, in Fitchburg. I don't know if it was approved, but there was like this like constant talking. I'm pretty sure it was approved, right? I have to look again at all that, but this is multi-million dollars to quote unquote train police, right? To build an entire city complex where the police can train in urban warfare, which is what they've done in Atlanta. And if it wasn't for the brave fighters there protesting the Cop City through the Stop Cop City movement, that building would have been, or that entire complex would have been built. But what we're seeing is this connection that's being drawn more and more between policing locally and the broader military sense. And what we're witnessing is a greater resistance that draws those connections, because they see that the policing that, constantly patrol our streets, the policing that have killed so many people. Last year was the most violent. It had the highest number of police killings. It broke the record of the previous year of 2023, where we broke the 3,000 mark of police killings last year. Those same cops, those same tactics they use, where are they getting them from? They're getting from military experts from Israel, of course. Right? We see that. So there are all of these connections. And so as we talk about the broader anti-war effort, we have to draw those connections as to how it is that our efforts locally relate to the broad anti-war, right? And vice versa, how the broad anti-war relates to what we're doing locally. And so what I want us to look at is something practical, and we'll talk a little bit more in the breakout room. I want to save time for that, but it's around the budgeting that we see. But this is what happens under a system that prioritizes profits. A system that prioritizes profits over people, a system that prioritizes, it's a death-making system, right? The system of capitalism, the system that would rather produce weapons and uses weapons as it's the main thing that we produce in this country, weapons used for the murdering of millions of people globally and of thousands of people here domestically. This is what we produce. We don't produce much else. We've lost a lot of production over the last several decades. We've kicked it out in order to produce this. And so where are all these jobs going? They're putting them into making these types of things. They're putting them into policing. They're putting them into prisons rather than actually doing things that would benefit and develop our peoples, right? And so by controlling the budget, by prioritizing the budget, we can say, you know what, we're not gonna fund these systems anymore. We're gonna actually fund our people and create jobs that are sustainable, create jobs that are actually good for the environment, create jobs that can sustain people and actually help people flourish. So this is a little bit of what we're going. I know I have to be very broad in my remarks, but we'll dig deeper as we go with this panel. But there's something to consider when we look at the question of anti-war and the question of just the repression that this ruling class puts on all of us and how it is that relates to the work that we've been doing around police crime. So I'll leave it at that and we'll keep it moving, but thank you all.
Thanks, Alan. And thanks to Tim and the other organizers, and especially thanks for bringing multi-use plates and silverware, and we have compost here. The last conference that I attended at UW-Madison before I retired was this environmental conference with all these professors and experts and practitioners. And then came lunch, plastic boxes with a bunch of things wrapped in plastic and plasticware. And so thank you for thinking about all of these things. May we all do it, yeah? So last week I saw a meme on Facebook and it showed Dr. Hussam Abu Safia, a Palestinian pediatrician. You've probably heard about him, and the director of Kamal Adwan Hospital, which by November 2024 was one of the last barely functioning hospitals in northern Gaza, with only 2 remaining doctors. Dr. Hussam had, time and again, refused to evacuate the hospital as ordered by the Israeli military forces for fear of abandoning his patients. Earlier, on October 25, 2024, the Israeli military stormed the hospital, bombed its buildings, detained many patients and hospital staff, and killed Hussam's Abu Safia's 15-year-old son, who was targeted by a drone. Dr. Hussam was interrogated on whether there were fighters inside the hospital and told to evacuate it. He assured the Israelis that there were only patients in the facility and was released, but the rest of the hospital medical staff were not. On December 27, Dr. Abu Safia was detained again when the Israeli military forced patients and medical staff to leave the hospital, alleging that the facility was a Hamas terrorist stronghold. By then, this was the last hospital operating in northern Gaza. The others were all destroyed. We know about Dr. Hussam, but he's far from being the only one. Hundreds of healthcare workers have been killed and hundreds have been detained and tortured. And we are afraid that this is what's happening to him right now. Reading about the doctor who wouldn't leave his patients despite the terrible price he knew he would be facing reminded me of a man I learned about as a child in Israel, the heroic Dr. Janusz Korczak, who ran a Jewish orphanage in Poland and refused sanctuary offers during World War II. He stayed with the orphans when they were sent to the Treblinka extermination camp in 1942. With them, he was murdered there. I can't ignore the similarities. I haven't been able to ignore the similarities for a long time now. My father was a historian of the Holocaust. We had a huge library in our house, a lot of it books about the Holocaust. I was a voracious reader. I pulled books. I read about what happened during the Holocaust. I saw photos. And I can't ignore the similarities. In both cases and in many others, through recent and older times, a crazed, power and expansion-seeking man, surrounded by other mostly men with their own personal sets of greed, hatred, and interests, whipped out bloodthirsty madness among their followers. These men benefit from the acquisitions of land, riches, and might. They do not put themselves in the killing fields, nor in any other dangerous situation. Then there are the men who benefit from supporting these leaders, the ones who are in the business of enriching themselves by producing the killing machines, as well as the ones who offer support so they wouldn't have to be the face of the mass murders. Joe Biden, for example. And we have the religious leaders telling their followers that God has blessed the mass murder and pillage. The followers are the ones who murder, rape, loot, and find in themselves the incredible level of cruelty humans are capable of. They're the ones who shovel out the bodies of thousands killed every day in gas chambers. They're the ones who destroy hospitals, schools, and homes and shoot toddlers in their heads. If you kill a child in regular times, you're a despicable murderer. If you killed hundreds of children in war, you're a hero. I have never been able to understand that logic. Wars don't end when they end. The trauma remains for generations. The hatred bubbles and boils under the surface. The vanquished want revenge and they are likely to seek it, which is an excuse to restart the cycle of horrors. Thus, wars and killings continue. The environmental damage of wars doesn't end when the war ends either. Depleted uranium, white phosphorus, chemical and biological weapons, 5,000-pound bombs, and other explosive devices used in urban settings, they all cause widespread destruction and pollution, which are exacerbated by damaged infrastructure such as oil facilities, fertilizers, and other chemical plants, water treatment plants, and so on. They affect air quality, water supplies, soil, health, leading to long-term environmental damage. As wars continue, these damages accumulate. Wars are killing us. It'll take maybe a little longer, Tim. They're killing the victims in large numbers. They're killing the attackers. They're killing everything that is good, and they're teaching new generations to follow in their previous generations' footsteps and become murderers too. Wars are killing our planet, our beautiful and loving Earth Mother, the only home that we have. I don't know how to end the endless cycle of killing, but I'll keep trying until my last day. We have seen the human race invent incredible things, unlock mysteries, and reach new levels of understanding. Surely it is within our capacity to change our warlust, our attachment to conquering, stealing, and murdering. I am honored to be with you all among people who feel the same and who do what they can to bring about a world of peace. Another world is possible. Let's start by being good to ourselves and to each other. Yes, Janan is right. Let's do a better job of working together within our organizations and among them. Let's become a big force for change for the better. Organize, 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 and do it in peace and with love. I'm challenging myself to do that. We have been asked to offer examples of collaboration, so I'll do it very quickly. The latest action. Sure, we can do that later. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Can you hear me okay? As you attend this conference this weekend, and even right now, I just want you to look around the room and see how many people are here, all of the interests shared and individual and collective that we represent. And just remember, we are not alone. One of the things that one other hat I wear, I co-host weekly programming at the Palestine Museum US, which is in Woodbridge, Connecticut. We do virtual programming. There were 350 people on Zoom this morning to watch a film called The Palestine Exception. Like every week, people from all around the world are interested. They're eager to learn more about what is happening. They're connecting the dots. So I just want you all to celebrate that and walk out of this conference with excitement, because we are making change. The genocide in Palestine is the critical issue of our time, in my opinion. And why? It's because to honor Palestinians' connection to their land and their right to live with dignity in their homeland, we can address virtually every social justice issue, both at home and all around the world, whether it's land rights, water, environment, education, healthcare, housing, voting rights, immigration, law enforcement, AKA policing and incarceration, food security, clean energy, militarism. The failure to address these issues is literally ruining people's lives and desecrating the earth. And that's really part of what brings us all here today. When we march for Palestine and we say we are all Palestinians, that is why. So I just want to remind all of you that Palestine was never a land without a people for a people without a land. It was always a multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multi-faith, multicultural place, and it was the crossroads of civilization, and it remains that today. It is literally the center of our world. And if we can fix that, we can fix anything. Today, the land between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea, which is Palestine and is now called Israel, it's an occupation, it's an apartheid, and it is now a genocide. And Palestinians, we have to remember, Palestinians have the right to resist the reconfiguration of their homeland, but they don't need our weapons or any weapons to do that. They need our protection so they can do the business of determining their own future, which is what they've been trying to do for the last 100 years. Each and every day, Palestinians, as Janan said, living is resisting. Palestinians are living on their land for those who are still there, have not been displaced or ethnically cleansed. And they're fighting for their rights, and they're rightfully resisting the dispossession of their homeland. And we all need to set the record straight and really demand accountability. Change the policies that perpetuate subjugation of people right here at home, which is what a lot of us are talking about today, and the Palestinian people in their own homeland. And all that is often done in the name of democracy and security and self-defense, and it goes on, right? But history tells us, and we need to remember, that Americans have been on the right side of history. Think of the civil rights movement. Think of the Vietnam War. Think of ending apartheid in South Africa. And of course, the civil rights movement is not over. We are still fighting for civil rights right here at home. But, you know, we witnessed the way people spoke. They stood up, they spoke, they standed up, and things changed. And we can do that today. So we face this dominant narrative, right? That somehow war is going to make us safer and it's going to protect our democracy. And then somehow Israel is protecting American interests, when in fact, all these successive wars that we have witnessed in the Middle East and elsewhere lead to death and the destruction, extremism, the destabilization of the region, if not the entire world. I mean, we know that American policy in the Middle East is actually driven by Israeli policy, led by Netanyahu himself, not currently, but currently and decades ago. And it has literally brought us to the brink of World War III. And this US interference in other places, of course, is not new. There's a long list of places we have been and are historically and currently, whether it's the Korea and Vietnam and Guatemala and Cuba and El Salvador and Nicaragua and Lebanon and Libya and Iraq and Syria and Afghanistan and Pakistan and Yemen and Somalia and Sudan and of course, even up to the present war in Ukraine. Those most affected by these schemes may hate American policy, but this country actually exports values that the world embraces: freedom, democracy, human rights, the rule of law, and international law. So why are we as Americans allowing the interests of a foreign nation to drive our foreign policy for decades? Not to mention our policies on our campuses and in our workplaces. Who was it that mentioned, you know, that students are being, you know, interrogated and persecuted, charged, you know, on our campuses. So it's really important to not forget that. And then why are we spending billions, as you mentioned, why are we spending billions on the war in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, when we need to invest those resources right here at home? I mean, you mentioned the fire. Any number of issues in any community across the United States, nobody has the money to do everything. And as we heard, Israelis have full health care, among a million other privileges at our expense. So I want to make kind of a joke. Let's take President Trump at his word and put actually America first. Let's recognize that Israeli policy is actually anti-American and frankly, anti-Semitic. It contradicts American values. It makes a mockery of them. And as so many Jews have spoken out right here in Madison and across the country and across the globe, not in our name, and talking about how Judaism is not Zionism, how the conflation of the criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism is simply wrong. Palestinian rights are actually aligned with American values. And if we address Palestinian rights, we address humanity. So what can we do? In my breakout session, we'll talk about history, we'll talk about connecting the dots that across issues and that build coalitions like we're doing right here today. We'll talk about the legal frameworks that we need to challenge and about addressing this whole narrative on Palestine and setting the record straight. And in closing, because I am a poet, I'm going to read you a poem I wrote this week. I was at a writer's retreat, and everywhere I go now, I read a poem. So those who know me won't be surprised. It's called Memory. Being surrounded by death and destruction does not erase the faces and places I hold dear. They are still here, reminding me of what used to be. The date palm still stands tall. Your weapons destroy our schools, universities, hospitals, clinics, mosques, churches, museums, monuments, kill our students, teachers, doctors, nurses, sisters, mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, sons, daughters, silence our journalists, poets, professors, rob our children of their dreams and hopes, their families and homes, even their arms and legs, or half their faces. But I reiterate, you cannot erase the memory of a face or place. We know every tree and flower, hill and valley, family story, for we have walked this land for millennia. We tend to the olive tree, which you recklessly uproot as we care for our children, our grandparents. Each generation carries the past, present, future in their bones. No matter their age, their message carries on from the grave or from beneath the rubble, guides us to bear the cold and cold shoulder of humanity. As the rain washes away our makeshift tents and meager food supply, sends our newborns off to heaven from heart attack or hypothermia, history reminds us we are not naive. Hence our reprieve, we shall relinquish our dignity. From each olive pit sprouts a tree. Just wait and you shall see. Palestine will be free. Thank you.
So much of what has been said, so much of what has already been said, I would just want to emphasize and lift up, because the group that I belong to, the Interfaith Peace Working Society, affirms all those values. I also want to say how thankful I am for this conference. You know, the most important thing about conferences like this is bringing us together and unifying us. And we won't get anything done if we're not unified. It shouldn't be that hard, because all the things that we feel so passionate about go together. They're all a part of the world we're trying to build, a world of compassion and peace and justice. So it's not a surprise that we should all be here together. What would be surprising is if we weren't, and we need to develop that deeper and deeper in a deeper and deeper way. The Interfaith Peace Working Group also shares all these concerns about Gaza. Who can see these pictures of what's happening to people in Gaza without tearing up? Who can tolerate that? It's just, if we have any empathy, we feel the suffering that these people are going through, and the enablement that our government is giving to Israel in order to inflict that suffering. It saddens us greatly. But the Interfaith Peace Working Group is also concerned about what several people in this panel have already mentioned, that you could call it the war system. the war system that consumes all our resources. You know, we, in our national government, we're supposed, especially focused on that issue of the war system as it's expressed in our national policies, particularly. We devote over 1/2 as a nation of all the tax money that is at the discretion of Congress to making wars. So it's not just opposing war, this war or that war, it's opposing all the bankruptcy that is being caused by the fact that we are obsessed, our leaders are obsessed with empire and with war and with weapons to maintain that empire. And that's consuming the resources. We won't make the progress we need to make on any of the issues about which we feel so passionate, as long as we're so obsessed with controlling the world through military power. And as long as we're spending all our money to do that. So we have to attack, that's the foundation upon which the whole system is built, I think. We have to attack that system. Our ultimate goal is the elimination of war. We are abolitionists. We believe that war must be eliminated or it will eliminate us. Dr. King said one time, the choice before us today is not nonviolence or nonviolence or violence, it's non-violence or non-existence. And in light of the weapons which we have developed, that's clearly even more the case today than when he said those words. We know that the abolition of war as an institution is idealistic, but we believe it can be done. It's the work of generations, though, just like ending slavery and ending Jim Crow or enfranchising women. It takes generations to accomplish. So the important thing is steadfastness, holding on and keeping on, passing the baton to the next generation and so forth. But we believe it can be done, and sociologists tell us that institutions can be eliminated if other institutions exist or can be created to perform the functions that that institution has been performing. We believe, or I believe, and I think the group that I represent does, that in the 20th century, Mahatma Gandhi developed and invented an alternative to war. You can call it war in another form. And that is the power of nonviolent civil resistance. People like Maria Stephan and Erica Chenoweth, who've written the book Why Civil Resistance Works, have studied 323 nonviolent and violent campaigns from 1900 to 2005. And they found that the nonviolent campaigns were twice as effective in achieving their purposes than the violent ones. So we believe that war is redundant in light of the possibilities and power of nonviolent direct action as practiced by Gandhi and King and others. Our primary purpose is to spread this awareness, spread this education. We need more people. We can't do it alone. We're here together, but we need more. And we're trying to make aware and educate people and mobilize them in the peacemaking work that we're a part of. And we're focusing specifically on communities of faith and conscience, because those communities value, or they claim to value, compassion and peace, justice, but they're not present, to the extent that they ought to be, to the extent that they were in the civil rights movement for a while at least, and the Vietnam War. We need more people, and that's a good audience for us to address because of the values that they claim to hold. And so we're working on providing educational opportunities by Zoom and in person educational opportunities, and we have a newsletter and these kinds of things, reaching out so that we can really have a groundswell of people engaged in this kind of peacemaking work. And so thank you for this conference, because it gives us all new energy and support for the work that we will continue to do.
Well, thank you to all of our panelists. We're really short on time. I had a couple of questions, but I think what I'm going to do is open it up to the audience. And if we can have our panelists keep their remarks brief so that we can get a few questions. And I know everyone is, is full of information. And so I think during the workshops, the breakout sessions, we can have additional conversations. But if you have a question, if you can let us know who you're directing it to as well.
Charles Uphoff. I'm wondering if there's anyone here who really thinks we're freer or safer because of 21 years of war in Afghanistan or years of war in Vietnam.
Is that actually a question?
This is for you, Janan.
I'm the moderator. No, that's okay.
We didn't get question and answers after your talk.
That's okay. Yeah, that's
So,
okay.
so is the destruction of Gaza a land grab by big money? Is there oil in the ocean off of Gaza?
Yeah, it's well known. It's been well known that there is gas. And they actually, believe it or not, they actually have Zionist organizations that are already selling off plots of land. They don't even have it yet, but they're already selling off plots of land. And so to just imagine that the genocide of so many children and women and human beings and the destruction for the purpose of gas. And the other aspect is that they would like to have, right now there's specific ways, like for example, through Yemen. Yemen has been creating kind of a difficulty for weapons going to Israel through there. They're trying to find also other ways in order to create docks for Israel. And so you've got the whole sea there on the side of Gaza. So it's without a doubt and it goes back to also, I used to speak a lot of times during the war in Iraq. I said that, if their national product had been cabbages, we would not be in Iraq, So it's really about natural resources that we feel that belong to us, so.
My question is about Iran. What do you think, anybody in all on the panel, what do you think Iran's going to react to this genocide? What do you think their eventual reaction is going to be?
Do you want to talk?
So I do follow that question close to heart. I am married to a woman of Iranian descent, and I love the Iranian people. I really do. I've grown really fond of them. Amazing cuisine. If you haven't had Iranian cuisine, you've missed out tremendously. Remarkable artists, and above all, their architecture. Just want to throw those couple things because I think very few of us know anything about Iran other than what we're fed. And we're fed that they're a hyper-militaristic, barbaric culture that will, is trying to achieve nuclear weaponry to destroy Israel. What the role in this is, I mean, they are the leading role in what is called the axis of resistance, right? Which was Iran, it was Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, all helping with Palestine, right, in various ways. So what the response will be, I don't think we can be fortune tellers, but I will say they are very calculated in how they move in this, and they're very sharp in their movements. And so no one, I think, in the region wants to see a full-out war. It would be devastating if there is an attack from the US or Israel, and they're constantly trying to prod so that they can justify a full-scale attack on Iran. But they're not giving in. But I think it shows a lot of restraint on their part. And again, it shows that they're thinking about this very strategically to not give in to the temptations that the Israelis are trying by constantly sending their little drones or sending bombardments and trying to attack different cities around Iran. But they're trying to destabilize the country because that country is the most it leads the resistance movement in the area. And without Iran, I think we would see terrible results for the entire area, because you have to look at it strategically where it is. This is the bridge between what is Asia and Europe, right? And if the US can finally get control out of all of that, which they tried doing through Iraq, that's why they had Iraq attack Iran in one of the most bloody wars of the 20th century. They're just trying to open that pathway to control that region, right? So we can't be fortune tellers and say what Iran's response will be, but we know that they're playing a key role in the resistance. And if Iran goes, it would be, I think, very devastating to the Palestinian people who have been, being supported by the Iranians. So I'll leave it at that for now.
I just want to add a few sentences here. Iran has been trying to get a nuclear weapon. It does not have one yet. The United States has 6,000, if I remember correctly, something like that. Israel has, we don't know how many, but they do. So the constant rhetoric that we hear about Iran is, to me, a lot more propaganda than actual. I mean, what are we afraid of? What will Iran do, right? And Iran has been attacked by Israel and the United States recently and before that. So it seems to me like what we need to worry about is, what will the United States do? We live here. We can make a difference here. For me, what will Israel do? Because I have citizenship there too. And really for all of you too, because Israel is the 51st state, or, maybe the first state, I don't know. So, to me, it seems like we need to listen to what we hear on American media carefully, and maybe put our concerns where we can actually make a difference.
Yeah, there's not much more that I'm going to add to that. I also agree. I don't think the issue is Iran. The United States and Israel, with the help of the United States, has attacked. They have killed experts. They have killed politicians. They have killed scientists. Had this happened to Israel or any other country, it would have been an all-out war. And I agree that Iran has shown tremendous restraint. I think this is really part of the broader vision that the United States has for the region. If Iran is basically taken out, they will be able to do whatever they want in the entire region, because one by one, every country has pretty much been neutralized. So.
Sorry to change the subject, but this is a question for Alan about the excess military equipment. It's not even all excess. I mean, they're sending military equipment all across Wisconsin. Could you address that?
Yes. Oh man, I'm trying to blank on the name. Is it Operation Legend? I think it's Operation Legend. I forget the name of the exact operation. So many of these so-called operations or whatever. Basically, what it means is that the quote unquote surplus of the military, so they have to rotate their materials whenever they run out of their either vehicles or armaments, whatever they may have, they sell them at a discount to various municipalities. And so you'll have something like, for instance, in 2020, the small municipality of Wauwatosa, which is just west of Milwaukee, you had military grade vehicle operated by the Wauwatosa Police Department. And some of us here, like, were, facing them in the street. So you have these tanks that are used for war being deployed against people. And that's just one example. You see this, there's a long list of all the different municipalities across the state that have received these equipment. So what is a sheriff's department in a small town in central Wisconsin doing with a tank? and that you see that list and you see that everywhere, right? Well, I'll tell you what they're doing. They're using it against the protesters, right? The people that are protesting Line 5. They're using it against any sort of people's movement. So this is a big issue, and this is just another way. So thank you for that question, Pam. I'll get the exact name. I want to say it is Operation Legend. I'm not the sharpest today, so but yeah, it's a program that gives military grade equipment to local law enforcement. So that's something to consider, right? And I think this is something that we're definitely keeping an eye on, starting after January 20th with this incoming presidency as to how they're going to deploy that armament, these local law enforcements against our peoples. And so it's definitely something to be concerned about, but something that's motivating our organizing even more to be sharper, to be more organized, to defend ourselves against this. So yeah.
All right. I feel like we have to stop, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I just wanted to make one really, really brief comment. Just along the lines of what we've been talking about, there has been an uptick in training of police personnel in Israel. They just recently, in fact, there was an article that talked about, I forgot how many, particularly going from Atlanta, but across the board, and really sinister training. They're talking about how now in particularly Black neighborhoods around the United States, you have the police coming with driving real slowly with flashing lights. And this is one of the ways that they've learned to intimidate based on the training that Israel has given them, because that's what they do in Palestinian areas. And so I think that this is an area that we need to be alert to. And I think we need to mobilize against this kind of training and bring awareness, because I don't think most people are aware that this is going on. But yeah, so I think now we're going to move to the next panel.
Yes.
Yes.
This is about unity, and we should hear both sides, not just one side. I am Ms. Catherine John Luda. You want to write it down? LUDIN from Milwaukee, temporary here in the native city of Madison. And Ellen, you said that they're using police department military equipment against the protesters. And didn't you know in 2018, Pittsburgh 3302 Leopold Way, Fairways Apartment. Nothing fair about Fairways Apartment. Coming out on the video with the coffee, there's a military, big vehicle, guys got out the back, and with the big thing knocked on the door, and they were protesters. They were trafficking little children, sex stuff. So if all the military stuff you're talking about ain't just about using against protesters. And this is what's interesting. I went to meet with
The environmental panel can start coming up and.
This was not the news, because if it was, I wouldn't have moved there. There's a lot of stuff that's not in the news, a lot of stuff in the news, like and you, is propaganda. So don't say
Okay.
that the military equipment is just used as protesters. They're used as wickedness. How dare they come illegal people and sex trafficking little kids right in Pittsburgh. They kept that out of the news. I took video for you. I'll shut up. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Yes. We've got another panel, the environmental panel. I'm sorry, we're packing way too much into this day, but bear with us. I think you're going to want to stay. If you need to get up and take a break, please do so quietly, and the environmental panel will be assembling here. At the end of the environmental panel, the environmental panelists, hello, could I have your attention, please? I can't talk over other people.